I feel very strongly about really trying to get more representation for men and more inspiration for men in the pole scene. We're still living in the day and age where men are not allowed in certain studios.
It's crazy.
That they're only allowed to take certain co-ed classes, that they're not able to come to exotic classes. And, you know, in my experience, and we have straight men, gay men, we have people who are transitioning.
Right.
So we have all sorts of different people who identify as men in our studio. And I can tell you that the one thing that each and every one of them has in common is that their first time here is definitely more uncomfortable than any woman
absolutely.
that has walked in this door.
You're listening to The Aerial Hour, episode number 19. The Aerial Hour is a traveling podcast where I interview aerial entrepreneurs from all corners of our industry on how they grow and sustain their businesses. Hello, Aerial Hour friends, and thank you for joining me for another episode. Before I get into today's guest, let me just run down my list of little details for you. First up, let me shout out Bee's Knees Knee Pads. Bee's Knees is going to be sponsoring the next couple of episodes of the Aerial Hour, and I could not think of a better fit for this show. And I would honestly never say that if I didn't fully believe and support this product. Bee's Knees knee pads are my absolute favorite knee pads. If you're like me, you always forget to put on your knee pads before putting on your heels. No longer is this a problem with Bee's Knees knee pads. Bee's Knees actually have a Velcro strap in the back that makes it super simple to take them on and off. They also come in a variety of colors and designs and are super, super comfy. Additionally, the back of the knee is open, so all those knee grabs are totally possible with these knee pads. Oh, and did I mention you can actually purchase replacement pads to insert into the knee? I mean, the owner, Sarah B, has literally thought of everything. Sarah is also a pole dancer herself and has done an incredible job of not only providing knee pads to this industry, but also supporting it as well. If you want to know more about her knee pads, you can head over to beeskneespads.com and use the code AerialHour for 10% off your purchase. I'll also include links to her Instagram, Facebook, and website in the show notes. Next up, if you want to know more about the show, you can follow us on Instagram at The Aerial Hour, as well as Facebook, and check out our website at theaerialhour.com. So now let me get into today's guest. Today's guest, plural guests, are none other than Squeak Machine and Booboo Brian. I am so excited to release this episode. The focus of this episode was primarily based around Mr. Pole Dance America, which is a competition that both Squeak Machine and Booboo Brian produced together. This competition was one of the most entertaining shows I have ever been to. It was hosted in New Orleans at Awakenings, where they put in a stage and everything. And it was not only entertaining, but it was just so well run. You'll hear more about the details and inner workings of how everything happened during the episode. Also, we talk about Brian and Squeak's experience in the stripping industry. Jill has been an entertainer for 20 years, which is just incredible. In this episode, we discuss why Jill found it important to offer space to the stripping industry, how they've seen the industry change over the years, and of course, Mr. Pole Dance America. Side note, this was like, goodness, I think it was January when I recorded this, and it was one of the first trips out of Florida, and I felt so welcomed by both Squeak, or Jill, and Brian. They really made both myself and my husband feel a part of their family. We got to go and experience a king cake party. We went and walked around and did a ghost tour, and I just really fell in love with their vibe. Whether it was being in the studio and taking classes, doing the interview, or just hanging out, I really just enjoyed being around both of them. I enjoyed being around them so much that I actually went back and interviewed just Jill, or Squeak, about awakening. So look forward to that episode. I really hope you all enjoy this episode. It was such a fun episode to create. Also, there's a lot going on in the background because, it's a pole studio and a pole class was going on. So just bear with us and I hope you enjoy. I'll see you on the other side. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Aerial Hour. Today I am in New Orleans and I am hanging out at the Awakenings Pole and Aerial Fitness Studio with Squeak Machine and Booboo Brian, and I can't believe it. Hey guys, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
So good. This is crazy. So we're currently sitting in your Bywater studio, is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
And this is your second space
Yep.
here in New Orleans.
In New Orleans.
Right, and we were already at your Canal Street studio.
Just like an hour ago.
Yeah, it was so cool. So I got to take a class this morning with you, and so I finished taking a class, and it was my second sling class, and I am obsessed.
Yeah.
It was so cool. Your cues are really great. How you pinpoint exactly what somebody needs to do, like that was amazing. What a great class.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, I love teaching that apparatus.
Yeah.
I just feel like, I've been teaching pole for probably 12 years.
Wow.
And aerial sling / hammock, depending on what you want to call it. I just think there's just so much instant gratification.
Yeah.
A student can walk into that class and just achieve a really neat sequence on the first day. Pole, it takes a little bit longer to get to that level.
Absolutely. It felt so good just swinging around, and everything that we did was just so beautiful. It was great. And I also got to take a class, what was it, Friday night?
Thursday.
Thursday
Yeah.
night. Yeah, I don't know what day it is.
Neither do we.
With Booboo, and that was an awesome class. I took stripping 101,
Yep.
correct? Yeah, and that was such a great class. So we'll get into all that in just a little bit. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's just get right into it. How long have each of you been dancing for?
So I'll go first. I just looked on Instagram because I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I started in 2013 at my first class.
Oh, wow.
And when I started, the only co-ed class was a strength and conditioning class. And I took a class with Veronica Nichols. She's a big pole dancer out in Los Angeles, and she trains a lot of people. And it was just luck of the draw. And she took me through my whole pole journey and still does to this day. But yeah, I took private lessons with her for legit a year, just because of there was being no co-ed classes. And
Right.
I was kind of a great precursor, because then we got into the studio being okay, we can start allowing men come to the studio now. Luscious Maven Studio, North Hollywood, fantastic studios, all co-ed, and it's such a beautiful space. And so yeah, I started there, and then I've trained in Denver and then New Orleans.
Okay, very cool. So that's
How
9
many
years?
Yeah, Brian.
Oh my God.
That was a whole lot of answer and not.
I know,
And I didn't hear a number.
I said 2013.
I can do math.
Okay, I don't want to do math.
Yeah, I was yes. So what would that be? Nine?
6 years?
6, 7.
Six.
Yeah,
6,
6, 7.
We'll go with, let's go
I'm
6.
bad at math. Yeah, that's a long time. And there weren't any men's classes at that point.
Not at that studio.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure there was some. I just didn't do enough digging. However, I was helping. I was in a burlesque troupe called Hell's Bells Burlesque, and so I was kind of the assistant in classes. And one of the teachers had her class. Alley Cat had a burlesque class.
Okay.
So I was subbing for her one day because she was out of town, and then one of my students came up to me and was like, "Why don't you take a strength and conditioning class? It's co-ed, and just come and." My first trick I've ever learned was an outside leg hang. So I kind of went into the deep end.
Yeah.
However, Veronica was amazing teaching it, and I was like, I still
Right.
got into it. And then
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, I can do, and then I was just addicted from then.
Yeah.
Addicted.
Yeah, I get it. That's same.
Yeah.
And how about you?
I'm about to celebrate my 20-year anniversary.
That's amazing.
I started it.
That's like a whole person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
a
totally.
person.
I started in April of the year 2000. So,
Wow.
And we're coming up on April 2020.
Wow.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. So I've been doing pole for almost 20 years and aerials for probably about 11.
Oh my gosh. And you were self-taught, is that correct?
Oh,
For a
yeah.
number
Well,
of
in
years?
the year 2000,
Yeah.
pole studios didn't exist
No.
yet. So, the way that I learned was up on stage in front of like 80 people.
Yeah.
Like a
That's
room
a-
full of people.
Yeah.
And you kind of just like, all right, if I put my leg here, does that do something? Does it look like something? I think the girl that was on stage before me did something sort of like this. I mean, yeah. I
Monkey
was
see,
super
monkey do.
young, so I had no fear. It was
Yeah.
a lot easier.
Right. And so when you started dancing, you were in a club, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how did you get started? What made you start dancing in a club?
My parents, and honestly, it does work. Some people are like, oh, it's terrible, but my parents made me pay for college like 100%.
Good.
And so, I had to get a job and I had to like learn to support myself very quickly. And I was going to a Catholic college and they were very limited on their class schedule.
Okay.
So all the classes were daytime classes. I couldn't take nighttime classes or later in the day classes. It was really hard to find a job that I could work part-time, like from like 5 on.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine was like, my sister dances and she makes X amount of money and only works 8 hours a week.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So like pretty much a couple days after my 18th birthday, I went and auditioned at a strip club and I got in and I just learned pole the hard way, just figuring it out.
Right. You get that instant like audience reaction. You kind of know, is this working or is this not?
Yeah.
Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
terrifying at 18. Oh man, that's incredible. What made you both fall in love with aerial or pole?
Ooh, I think for me it was definitely the taboo because I'm kind of like almost I'm kind of the wild child in the family, so I've always been in touch with a little bit more of the sensual side and the sexy side, and I was like, okay, I kind of want to dive into this, and that's what really drew me to burlesque.
Okay.
And then from there, I always find burlesque is a good precursor to aerial arts and pole.
Yeah.
So then once I started going into pole, like it was just, I've been wanting to do it for years.
Okay.
And like there's like videos on YouTube. I was like, I want to do it. But of course I was like, I don't want to go into a class. I'm going to be only boy.
Yeah.
And like we always say the hardest thing in your pole journey is walking in on that first class. But once you do, it's like you meet your family, you meet your friends. And so.
Yeah. It's that lovey.
It's, yeah, totally.
ooey-gooey.
And then it's like, and then the community makes you
Yeah.
want to stay. Because
Right.
it's like you think the pole community is within your studio. And you're like, oh, we have events like
Yeah.
PoleCon.
Right.
And where we have competitions all over the world and you meet like everyone. You're like, now you have a global network of friends. So it's
So
really,
beautiful.
it's really beautiful. Yeah.
Sure. Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ditto. Ditto.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, it definitely started out as a job, and I don't know if I realized that I loved it until much later. It didn't even occur to me that this was going to be like my life. I kind of did it, and I was like, I'll just do it until I get through college. And then I got out of college, and that expectation that like, oh, I'll just walk into a great paying job.
Right,
like,
right.
Of course, like that doesn't happen for many people. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just strip a couple more years, and a couple more years turned into a lot more years.
Okay.
And then pole studios came about, and having already skill sets, of course, I started teaching pretty early on in the pole studio like development. And I guess I didn't realize it was going to become my life. And now it's almost like I love it in retrospect.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like my whole love with pole is just looking back in retrospect and just realizing like, wow, this is my whole life.
Yeah.
Like it's almost as far back as I can remember. It's always been there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
So ingrained. I love it. I really do. How did you both get your names?
Oh, mine was actually my first time I competed. So my last name is like a long Polish.
Okay.
Like it sounds like a kielbasa. Like it's not something you want to like not sexy.
Okay.
And then the owner at Luscious Maven, she was like, "Oh, you have a lot of wolf features, so why don't you go by Brian Wolf?" And I was like, and it was, I think it was the deadline for the competition was PSO PPC, Pacific Pole Championships. And so I was like, okay, I'll just put wolf and I'll change it later. And then it just stuck.
Yeah.
I'm like, everyone's like, do you like wolves? And I was like, I have no connection to wolves, but I was like, it's just my name now. And
You're getting wolf blankets in the mail.
But then Booboo is kind of, that's how, that's kind of the common one because I was born near Halloween. So my mom always called me Boo and then turned into Booboo Cakes because, you know, hashtag mom life.
Yeah.
And then it just stuck, and a lot of people just started calling me Booboo. And I was like, I think it's fun, easy to say, and it's
Like,
me.
thanks, Nancy.
Right? Thanks, Nancy.
Yeah, that's great. And how about you?
Mine was actually a terrible nickname that I had all through school because people called me like Minnie Mouse, Squeak Machine because I have a high voice and I get it. And then as an adult, I kind of just was like, I'm just going to embrace
Embrace
this.
it, yeah.
And,
Right.
like, they're saying it to be nasty. I'm just going to like make this what I go by and turn it into something that is not so bad.
Exactly,
So, yeah. And then that's just how it's been.
Yeah.
And then Squeakers,
Brian has a lot of nicknames.
Oh, I just play off of
Like,
it.
yeah, he's got so many.
Squeakers.
Squeakers. That's quite adorable.
And some that I'll
Yeah.
hit him if he says on the mic.
I was like, I'm sworn to secrecy.
I can see it. I can see it. It's almost out of his mouth, and I'm just like curling up my fist.
Yep.
Yeah, I love you. Sip the LaCroix.
I love both of your names. Having never met you, I think they both make you feel so like comfortable and
thank
easy.
you.
Yeah, like
It's also our personalities too.
Yeah,
'Cause it's
right, right.
For me, like I don't take my life seriously at all. So it's like Booboo, I'm just a wayward child.
it makes it less intimidating.
Yeah.
You guys are both very approachable.
And then people call me Boobs. That's a nickname.
Boobs.
Boobs. I get boobs a lot.
like that.
My cousin calls me Tits because I call her Boobs because we call each other Boo Boo, and I call her Tits and she calls me Boobs.
I need to find somebody to call Tits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, hey Tits.
That's what I need in my life. How long was it before both of you started teaching and competing?
So for me, it was pretty soon after
Okay.
I did. So I was at a scholarship program.
Oh, very cool.
And that program was fantastic. And we actually got certified in pole moves, which is a pole certification. So I got certified through there, and that kind of got me into the door to teaching.
Okay.
And then that was probably about a year and a half into my training.
Okay.
And then once my scholarship ended, I went to train and compete, and then signed my soul to the devil. And
And you won.
And then
Yeah.
6 years later, I was
Right.
like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So that was mine, but it was pretty quick. I wish
Yeah.
I wish I would have taken a little bit longer because definitely I love teaching. Like it's my heart, but like once you start teaching, it's more about the students and not about your
Right.
journey anymore. So it's
Right.
kind of definitely hard to balance that.
Absolutely.
But I love it. I was like, I love, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but I love inspiring students because that's
Yeah.
just one thing I've just always wanted to do.
Right.
Is like get people like, oh my God, I want to teach, and I'm like, I would love to point you in the right direction for that. Yeah.
You mentioned that you have a certification.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see like a major benefit in certifications?
Absolutely. So I'm
Yeah.
actually, I just got a job with Pole Moves. So
Okay, very
I
cool.
teach the in-training certifications.
Wow.
And what I like about them is it's very much anatomy, a little bit of physics, and a lot of like, it helped me be a better teacher, and I'm sure Jill can tell you, but like my warm-ups are really shit because it was basically static stretching, but after pole moves, I was like, okay, I realized like how much our shoulders are important, our heart rate is important. It's a physical activity, you know,
Right.
and like of course being younger, everyone's like, I can just go on a pole and I don't have to be warm, but it's like, you know, when you come to start pulling 7 days a week, you're like, I kind of got to be a little bit more conscious of my
Right,
bodies, yeah,
right.
because my knees are gonna give out
Right.
when I'm older, and I was
Yeah.
like, I need to be a little bit more careful with
Yeah.
that.
Cool. And how about you? When did you start teaching and competing?
well,
So you had a lot of experience by the time.
so
studios
by the time
opened.
studios came around, I mean, it's kind of weird seeing it from like it was weird seeing it the way that I saw it because I was coming from it almost felt a little bit like appropriation at first. So I have to say that when studios started coming about, the stripper perspective was maybe like, oh, so they're making money off of doing something that we've been, like, we are the creators of it, you know, we're the pioneers, and, you know, they're not really respectful.
They weren't.
Yeah, at the time, so it wasn't really a popular thing among strippers. So it took me a couple of years to warm up to the idea of pole studios, just because it was kind of like, I guess in our minds we thought, oh, it's all these like upper class privileged women who are basically stealing our moves and stealing our techniques, and they're making money off of it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, hey, that's what we're doing too.
Yeah.
right.
So it's, you know, I started warming up to the idea, and also just because I was starting to have a lot of health problems. I had a lot of back issues, and I dislocated my thumb one time on stage in front of all these customers and relocated it myself. Now
Oh my God, you relocated it? Oh my God.
That's
and just
gangsta.
popped it back in and went
Gangsta.
back to
Badass.
I passed out in the office like right
my
afterwards.
God.
But I started seeing like a benefit. I was like, okay, like I could keep doing pole for a couple more years and retire from stripping, but if I want to start doing this like long term, or if I want to keep doing it even as a hobby, like I need to learn how to do this correctly, and I need to get some kind of fitness training. And so that's what kind of warmed me up to the idea of studios. So it probably, I guess, around 2007 or 8, I think I started looking into going to pole studios, and at the time they weren't very well organized. It was kind of like, you know, it was every level in one class, or they would attempt to level it out, but it would never really work out that way. So it was a little bit more discombobulated and frantic than it is now. It's such a well-oiled machine now. But I would go off and on, and I would always be asked to, like, you know, they would kind of want to throw me into teaching. And honestly, I turned it down for a really long time until actually Awakenings. So in Philadelphia, I started with them, and they were the first pole studio I'd ever been to where they really had it down. Like they had levels, and you had to test into it. I couldn't just walk in and start doing things. And they had clear warm-ups and clear conditioning. And I was like, this is great. And it was really starting to make a difference in how my body felt. And they pulled me aside one day, and they didn't say, well, let's start you tomorrow. They pulled me aside and said, we'd like to start maybe a 6-month training and have you kind of intern and shadow some of our instructors. And I was so impressed with how safe they were being and how much they were going to invest in me before even putting me into a class, that I was like, this is my home. And that's why we still carry that name, because I'm still connected to them. The owner, Heather Swallock, she's really empowering, and just, she's like influenced me in so many ways. So
It's a beautiful studio in Philly too. It's beautiful.
And then competing wise, the strip club scene is interesting. I mean, I did a lot of like strip club competitions and radio show competitions when I was a young stripper, and then I got into big stripper competitions like Diamond G,
Get it, girl.
you know, Queen of the Pole and Platinum Pole, and like actually a lot of the money that I won, because of those kinds of competitions,
Where the
have
money's at,
$15,000 prizes, $10,000 prizes. So I saved that money, and a lot of that money is what I built my studios with.
Really?
And it took me actually my very first, like, I hate to use the word real, but like in quotations, pole competition was actually only 2 years ago.
What?
Yeah. Dance Filthy. Like,
no way.
Yeah, Brian convinced me to like put in for it, and I was like, I just never wanted to compete in the fitness pole community before. Well, because I guess having that stripper mentality, I was like, but what do you get? And they were like, a title, and I was like, but how much money do you get? And they would be like, no, nothing really. And you also have to pay. And so I was just like, but I don't understand. So it took me a while, and now I see the benefit. Like I see the benefit of like how it can drive you to improve like yourself, how it can make you a better performer, just so many different things. But it is very different coming from the stripper scene.
Different, I'm guessing, like different training, different everything.
I mean, and weirdly enough, the training and like the setup is very similar.
Okay.
Diamond G is a pretty big one, and that one I've won twice.
Wow.
And that one is a team based, so you can have more people in your routine. So I could have like not just me on the rigging. I can also bring in like another person to work with me, or we could do 3 people on something, and it's very long. It's a 10-minute routine. And you have to have a theme, an
10
outfit.
minutes?
Yeah, it's 10 minutes,
What?
and you have to show multiple apparatus, and you have to have a clear theme, which is why you want to have people. So if you're doing like an Avengers theme, you'll have like different people playing different roles, and there'll be a small story, and you're performing. And so honestly, like coming from that and into the regular pole fitness competitions, I was like, well, this is actually pretty easy.
Right.
Not easy to win, but easy to put together and train for, because I didn't have to build props and I didn't have to like come up with how am I going to get from this outfit to the next outfit. Like I'm going to have to design like a 30-second break and then have someone else on stage to distract the audience and distract the judges while I change. Or sometimes we would be in these tiny little boxes. Like you'd have like a little trap door. You could crawl into this box and quickly change your whole outfit out and then come out back onto the stage and finish the next routine in a whole different outfit. I was like, I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So this is amazing.
I made a Halloween show, and I started as a Ghostbuster, and then was Poison Ivy for Batman, and then I had to get into a Stormtrooper outfit to finish the show. Like, and I like literally all this happened in like 8.5 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, strip club. I judged EDI one year in Denver, and it's an entertainers competition, and that was hands down one of my favorite competitions to watch. I love watching entertainer competitions because it's like they go to the limit. Like one, I remember vividly, we had one girl who was Catwoman. She had a scratching post that doubled as a shower, and it showered black water on the stage. It was ridiculous. And then it was my first time seeing Viva La Muerte. She came out in a taco outfit and was like doing money guns. She was, it was dope. Like that competition's like, strip club competitions are the shit.
That's so cool. Mm-hmm. There's like a different level of confidence that I think that strippers have. I guess that it comes from being on stage maybe so often that like before I had went to a strip club, I didn't quite see it, but now it's like so clear. Mm-hmm. There's just like this different level.
I think it's just because, like I said, my first time with a pole, the first time I ever touched a pole was in a crowded room of like 80 to 100 people just sitting there watching me. Wow. And I just had to figure it out. Right. And that's all I've ever known for the longest time. And performing like on stage and the amount of energy the audience gives back to you just makes it so easy. And that was another thing that really was difficult and kind of turned me off to away from the fitness pole competitions, was that the audience, other than Dance Filthy and a few others, the audience can be very, like, first of all, it's like a black cloud in front of you. You can't see anybody. They're not up against the stage. You just look out and there's lights. There's no energy. Like, they clap and cheer here and there, but it's not like a strip club. No. Like, a strip club, people are, like, slamming their hands down on the stage. They're like, damn! Like, you know, they're throwing money at you. They're screaming. They're cheering. Like, that whole, like, that is just, there's nothing like it. And I was really happy. I don't know if you're familiar with David Owen.
Yes,
So we used to work together in Philadelphia all the time, and he owns a studio in Chicago. But David got the opportunity to perform once at a strip club, like a female strip club, with that kind of like the money and everything. And I just remember him saying like, wow, I understand like what you're talking about. I could never felt anything like that. Right. And it's one of those things I would love for other people to experience and find some way to let other people experience it.
Right. I agree. I think it's important, and especially in this community, it's always been confusing to me why it's separate, like why this divide was created. I just don't understand it in this community, because we're so supportive of each other. Except for these stupid things. And we're so diverse at this point that there's like no reason for it. Anytime I see that debate, it's just like, can we just stop? Like, let's just stop. So you've been stripping for almost 20 years. And how long have you been stripping for?
I've been on and off. I really didn't start stripping like for reals until I came to New Orleans,
Okay.
and that was, Jesus, 2 years ago.
No, it has to be long. I feel like
3 years ago.
2017.
Yeah. And I started stripping down on Bourbon.
Okay.
And it was more go-go work, but still you still have to like go out and you have to definitely have your clients
Okay.
and you have to have your regulars.
There's a lot of hustle.
It's a lot of hustle, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I do a show on Bourbon Street every Tuesday, which I can bring my pole. So we usually do that and with Trixie Minx, and it's a Bourbon Boylesque show, but I usually do my pole stripping there, and still the same type of feel. But
That's super cool. That's super cool. How has I'm sure you've seen the industry like change completely. So let me first ask Bryant, how have you seen the industry change in just your short amount of time?
with stripping,
Yeah.
it's different. So for me, especially with the male strip clubs, I got to deal more with the homosexual as well as the women crowd. So I feel like that for me is a little bit different. Especially in New Orleans, I see a lot more bachelorettes.
Yeah.
And so those are the ones I'm always like kind of like, ugh. But however, they're the ones who are going to tip because they're all excited to see a male stripper. They want to tip you. They want to be like, oh my God, I did it.
Yeah.
And then usually, but I usually use the guys for my regulars.
Okay.
And so I definitely make contact with them.
Yeah.
And, of course, you got to be yourself to an umph degree. So you have to like hustle, and then I use my stripper name, so it's still, I consider myself like a true stripper, just not necessarily with pole so much.
Yeah.
But
I like it.
it's all the hustle. And like,
Right.
And like I was saying before, it's like I feel like, especially for me, like stripping, like most of it is about the social aspect as well as the hustle aspect.
Yeah, and
So.
that's been the same for a long time. I mean, there's definitely been changes in the industry, but I wouldn't say that it's a linear change. It's more like a pendulum. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
you just
Totally.
see, over my 20 years, I've seen clubs get more lax in their rules and then all of a sudden tighten up and then go back to being more lax, and then some things are okay and then some things are not, and sometimes we're hiring in a very diverse way, and then sometimes they are not.
Okay.
Sometimes we're allowed to listen to rap music, sometimes we're not. And it honestly has to do with the political climate
That
at the
makes
time.
sense.
It has to do with who's running for office in the city. It has to do with just what things are like in that city, like
Yeah.
what's going on, and the club's just trying to stay off the radar and stay in the good graces of whatever, But I would say, the pendulum, like anytime things are like, oh, the money is bad, stripping is horrible right now, it's the worst time to strip. I mean, I've heard that throughout my whole stripping career.
Right.
So I feel like people say that, but I don't know if that's really, an issue. I think it's just that, like I said, the pendulum, it'll swing back. Like you'll have slow times and it'll go back to being really good. It'll go back to being slow. I will say that overall, one thing that has remained constant in the industry that I hate is the fact that couch dances are the same price as they were 20 years ago.
I was reading an article where you did an interview. I think you guys were both on the interview. About how that hasn't changed.
No.
Like, that's insane.
Like, we've literally never gotten a raise. It's been 20 years, and we are still giving $20 couch dances.
It's crazy.
And there are, the clubs here on Bourbon charge more, but they've also always charged more.
Okay.
So it's not like a really big increase has happened for them. But, so that's one thing I wish would change in the industry, but I just don't know if it will.
Yeah. One thing that I saw at clubs was women just being totally inappropriate. Is that something that you have to deal with, either of you?
Yeah, and actually, the men deal with it worse.
I was like, it's interesting. It's like you almost think about the stereotype of the white girl coming into a gay club and they think they own the place, and it's like it's very much like that in a strip club, because it's like I've gotten my crotch touched by women, they put in their hands in my pants without me consenting to it, obviously, and it's like it's like it just happens. And I hate having women clients because they're very invasive, because they don't really think about the other side of sexual harassment most of the time. So it's but I mean, I'm pretty open
the
with
amount of times that I hear but why? I'm a girl.
Yep.
But
Mm-hmm.
it should be
What?
okay. Yeah, like in couch dances, I'm always nice. Like if people try to grab my boobs or do something that I know they get in trouble for, I don't snap at them, but I'll be like, oh, you got to keep your hands down.
Mm-hmm.
You can put them here on my thighs. It's okay. They'll be like, but why? I'm a girl. Like I hear that a lot. And I'm just like, yeah, but like the rules apply to human beings.
Right.
There's not gender specific. So it's just hard because I feel like, I get it. They want to feel this like sisterhood and they want to feel like they are closer to us or somehow not as offensive to us or that they're saving us from all these like dirty, evil men. But I have to say that a lot of times the men are easier to couch dance.
Oh,
with.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, I felt so much more respect from my male clients at the club than my female.
Yeah.
I was like, and stuff that the females would say to me, like they would try to pull me into the bathroom to make them give me blowjobs, and I was just like, well, good fucking luck on that. And I was like, it's pretty bad, but it's
I just try to always remember that sometimes we're seeing people at not their best.
Absolutely.
Like they're wound up, they're
Right.
with their friends, they're drunk, or they've either trying a
they
substance
escape,
for
and
the
that's
first
when they go to the
time.
clubs. And
And they're trying, or they might even just be trying out a different aspect of their personality, and they're testing it on us. And so I try to be understanding that maybe in any other situation, this person would actually be a very likable person.
Right. Well, that's very kind of you. That's sickening that that's even a thing, especially in this day and age. Like that makes no sense.
Yeah.
I really hope that at some point that changes. Like I don't know. I don't know what you do, what anybody can do, except vocalize that shit's not okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Also, it's like kind of one like it's like the main rule in life. Like treat people with respect and how you want to be treated.
Yeah.
It's the same thing if I go into work and I see a dancer on stage and I'm like, oh my god, like I would go up and of course I would treat him like with respect, and I was like, of course they're gonna treat me with respect rather than if I walk up there like a dick.
Yeah.
I was like, you're more likely to like be pushed away or not even get dances from them. So
Right. Well, that's a nice perspective. How are you currently promoting yourself in this climate where we're at now?
It's very hard. It's very hard. I mean, I try to be, again, very understanding that a lot of these platforms like Instagram and Facebook, they are setting these boundaries because they've seen what has happened to Tumblr and Backpage and Craigslist and all these companies that their owners are in jail or are facing massive fines and lawsuits. And they're trying to protect themselves, and I understand that. I try to protect myself, too. My studios have liability insurance, and I have liability insurance. We all want to protect ourselves from potential lawsuits or things that might do our businesses harm.
Yeah.
But it is making it very difficult for us to stay in business and for us to promote. Even recently, Patreon has gotten way more strict about what they consider to be pornographic versus erotic, because they have always allowed erotic videos and pictures, and now they're kind of making more guidelines as to like where is that line between erotic and pornographic. It used to be very simple rules to follow. It was like, don't penetrate yourself, and no sex, but now they're saying, well, even close-ups of vaginas and things like that, but somebody could take a really beautiful picture of a close-up of a vagina, and that could be incredibly artistic. So I think nobody really knows now, and it's the same thing with Instagram. I don't really know, what am I allowed to say? What am I allowed, what kind of pictures am I allowed to use?
Music, am I allowed to post this song?
Yeah, it just
what
feels
is it going to be that's going to get me?
Yeah, but it's hard because it's like you think about that, and especially Instagram is very much connected to the pole community. Pole community is heavily run on Instagram, so it's like, well, if we don't have Instagram, what do we have? So it's like we try as hard as we can, but again, there's going to be those boundaries, and this is what we can do with it right now. So
I know there have been apps and things that have been made and created for polars The only difficult thing is that as a studio owner, I don't want to promote to pollers.
Right.
I already have
Right.
pollers in my studio.
Right.
So Instagram and Facebook are a great way for me to find people who maybe have an interest in bar or Pilates
Right.
or something connected to pole, but maybe they would have never searched for it themselves.
Yeah.
And Instagram will put that like in front of them, so
Right.
it gives them an opportunity to discover something new.
Right.
And if we end up breaking away from Instagram entirely, if we end up breaking away from those, then we're kind of
Defeating a little
yeah,
purpose.
Yeah,
we're not
right.
really going to expand on our community.
Right.
We're just going to kind of grow stagnant
Yeah.
and kind of become very reclusive toward
Yeah.
it.
So have you found any ways to work around it, or?
Just being very careful about what
Okay.
I post. Obviously, like how much skin contact or like how much skin is showing.
Really?
And if there is a lot of skin showing, what kind of positions
Really?
people are in
Okay.
can make a difference. I have to definitely make sure it's more artistic looking or artful or like yoga like. But I heard that even Nude Yoga Girl, who is a huge Instagram following, and she's been having a lot of trouble with her pictures being taken down and shadow banned. And I was just like, okay, so even the yoga community
Yeah.
is starting to
Right.
have this problem.
Wow.
But like I said, at the end of the day, like what we have to do is really fight what brought this. And this is Fosta Sesta,
Right,
of course,
right.
and enabling the government to put these companies in charge.
Right.
Like Instagram shouldn't have to be in charge of sex trafficking.
Right.
Obviously, if it's something that comes across to them, like they need to report it.
Right.
But it's not their job.
No, it's not their responsibility.
And
Yeah.
the other thing is a lot of people don't realize is that now it's making it harder for people whose jobs to find sex traffickers. It's making their jobs a lot harder because they were using Instagram and they were using hashtags and they were using Facebook and Craigslist and Backpage to rescue people. So when all of these things got shut down and all of these hashtags are no longer searchable, we've just made it a lot harder to rescue people who actually need to be rescued.
Yeah.
So, because they are just shrinking into like the shadows now, and there's no way for us to find them. So, I just don't really see what passing that bill has done
Yeah.
to affect.
It's almost
like,
made it more dangerous.
it's made it
Yeah.
more dangerous, and it's
Yeah.
creating more victims.
Yeah,
Because
right.
here on New Orleans, we used to have a dozen strip clubs on Bourbon Street, and now there's 4
Wow.
because of the raids. And so,
Wow.
where do you think all of those women who
Right.
have no other job backgrounds, no job history, all they've known is, exotic dance,
Right.
and that kind of money and that kind of schedule. Some people can adapt, but a lot of people turn to other means.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's created more problems.
Right. Oh, well, I think you guys do an amazing job of supporting the local stripping community in your studio.
Thank you.
For sure. And even when people lost their jobs from the raids, we reached out to a lot of women who found themselves without a job, and we let them know that if they needed to use our studio as a resume reference, that we would back them up. So if they reached out to us and gave me some information about how long they've been in the city or what I need to say in case these people call and actually
Yeah.
do follow up, but we were allowing them to use our studio as a reference so that they could find other
Yeah.
jobs.
Wow.
We're like the wayward studio for lost girls.
Yeah. the workshop that I took the other night with you, Brian, it was Stripping 101, and it was just incredible. There were so many like little nuggets that I think being taught that from the beginning would be so beneficial.
Yeah.
And I can totally see like your burlesque background kind of coming into that because your stage presence is like everything.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
How did you start supporting that community?
I mean, obviously being part of it
Yeah.
for so long,
Right.
but
How did you get them to come to the studio?
Well, that was something I always had brainstormed about, just because I know that I had judgment as
Right,
a stripper
right.
about the pole community when it first started getting developed, and I just didn't want that to be a thing. I want to start to bridge that gap. Because it's funny, because people are always like, why can't the strippers and the pole community get along? And they always blame the pole community. They're like, oh, the pole community hates strippers. But honestly, it's both sides. Like, strippers can be a little judgmental about the pole community too. And that's why we actually started developing memberships for the dancers. So our memberships for the dancers are cheaper. And people will always be like, oh, but they make more money. And I'm like, it doesn't have to do with money. It's the sense that why that was created is because we're trying to get them to come here. Because for two reasons. One, we want them to feel part of this community. And I understand that if you just got done dancing on a pole for 6 hours the night before, that maybe coming to dance on a pole is really not your first choice that day. Especially if you have to pay a lot of money to do it. And two, I know as a stripper that I was not doing things correctly. And if I had kept going the way I was going without learning anything about my muscles and my body, warming up, conditioning and training, I would have destroyed my shoulders a million times over by now. And so I just think it's important, and whatever I can do to get them to come here and learn how to correctly do things.
Safety.
So that
it's beneficial,
they don't have that risk.
That's what I was just thinking.
I want them to be able to strip as long as I've been stripping. To be able to say, like, I'm a stripper, I've been a stripper for 20 years. And my shoulders are still fine. Like, I'm still going. And I want them to be able to do that as well. And in order to do that, you've got to be able to do it right.
I think there's so much that we can benefit from both sides. Like, again, that level of confidence that strippers have. Like, I need that. Like, I definitely need that. And again, teaching things the correct way so that you can have a long career is so important. So besides offering discounted membership, did you go into your clubs and kind of just be like, hey,
I mean, word gets around really quick in the strip clubs.
Especially in New Orleans. It's such a small, tight-knit city.
In any city, we all work at multiple clubs. So, it only takes like one girl who spreads the word to a different club and everything else. And, I think a lot of people know that I'm a dancer, so I think that made it easier for a lot of them to come here, because they were like, well, the owner's a stripper too. But even, but I mean, it's just been kind of like word of mouth and just, letting, also just, I think it helps that we're very like body positive here. We don't have restrictions on what they can wear. You'll see girls in some pretty small outfits, and our boys in some pretty small outfits. So, and sometimes a lot of strippers feel a little uncomfortable because the way that what they want to pole in and what they want to practice pulling in, sometimes I think they feel like, oh, am I going to be the only one, like this scantily clad? So, it's been good.
So now getting into talking about competitions, both of you compete like on a somewhat regular basis. What made you decide to get into competing?
I think for me, it was I always feel like what happens in pole studios is I always find pole sport organization to be like kind of like the gateway drug when it comes to competing, which is fantastic because there's so many categories and levels, and that's where I started. And then I just kind of went up from there, and then I'm kind of picky and choosy about where I like to compete because I'm kind of a one and done type of competitor. So because I'm not good under that kind of stress. Jill can tell you. She has video footage.
Oh my gosh, I have videos and pictures of Brian like
I'm terrible
freaking
under
out
pressure.
before every competition. He just
and
like
I actually feel like I
mess.
perform my worst on stage in competition under pressure. Absolutely, because I'm such a...
I would agree with that. Just because I mean, obviously we spend a ton of time together. So there's times that I'm just like teaching a class, and I'll be teaching in the aerials section, and Brian's just messing around on the pole, and I see him do some of the most amazing things when he's just messing around by himself, and I'm just like, I don't know why you just can't just do that on stage.
And that goes kind of along, because I'm like, that's why I have a love-hate relationship with Instagram, because once you put a camera in front of me, I freeze up, and that's why it's like, and it's hard for me to post something that I like, so that's why my posts are very, very slim nowadays. I want to try to get really better about it, so I'll tend to post class flows, because that kind of gets me to do it. But it's just it's such huge pressure for me, and especially being on such a like having a platform of all those followers, it's like I don't want to let them down. And well, people are like, well, why are you up in the air anymore? People are like, well, I want to see more, more flow. And so
fuck them.
yeah, right.
Seriously.
Right. It's just, it's difficult, but yeah, I was like, that's why for me, when I won Dance Filthy in 2018, that was and I saw The Crown, I was like, that's kind of my stopping point for right now until something else that peaks that I like comes along. Just because it's like, I don't like, competing is definitely like I always call it like your job, like the job interview or like the big like presentation you have to do at work, because it's like, this is what I've been working on. But I was like, there's other ways that you can do that as well. And like, I like having the followers that I do, because I think especially once I started being very especially when I started stripping, like opening that door of like, yes, I am a male stripper, and yes, I will teach you how to strip. I think one of the most humbling things, especially what happened like last night, we were at a Hustler Club, and one of my proteges came up, and she was just like, she's like, this happened all because and she looked gorgeous. She was like dressed to the nines, honey, long hair, little bikini. I was like, yeah, it's my baby. So it's like, I was like, that brings me so much more gratification than a title. And I was like, and nowadays it's like, you get everyone, like there's a new competition in 2 days, and it's like, you have your 15 like seconds of like, oh, I won something. Okay, now it's the next thing. And it's like, I would rather compete for myself and be like, okay, this is something that I'm proud of, than trying to do it and in a sense that like, oh, I could lose my job over this. Right. It's the pressure. I'm terrible under pressure.
Yeah. 2 points. Everybody is apparently nervous. Like, everybody gets nervous.
Oh, absolutely.
This is what I'm learning. Like, you're like, no.
I don't. I love it. I get so revved up. But
really?
Again, I think that comes from the stripper thing. Because, as a stripper, when you're standing around and you're waiting for your turn on set, and the girl in front of you goes, and there's like tons of money on the stage, you're like, get me up there, get me up there, get me up there. And so I feel like that with competition, I'm always so excited to get on the stage.
Okay.
But the only reason that I even competed was because in the pole fitness, like, obviously for the stripper reason, I competed for money.
Right.
In the pole fitness community, it was because that was the last thing that I felt like I did not have a connection to. And I didn't want to be that person anymore. I didn't want to be judgy. Like, oh, well, if there's no money, why should I compete? And I was like, no, I should have this experience, and I should understand like what this brings to my life and how it affects other people. And it is great. I mean, I actually have so many close friends, like just off the top of my head, like Leah and Abby F. And there's just so many people that we would just always constantly be in the same category. So we got to know each other. And now I'm like, oh, I love this person. I would have never met them if I didn't do this. So
that's the one thing from competitions that I love is meeting the people. Like, I was like, hands down, that's I love going there because everyone has that like pumped up energy. And like and it's like cool to like see everyone's craft on stage.
For sure.
And absolutely. Also, I think there's just not enough venues out there for polers to perform in. It's almost like if you don't do competitions, the showcases and the big pole shows that are non-competitive are few and far between.
And those are the ones
a lot of them are not even open to all levels. I mean, PoleCon, Colleen Jolly, she's freaking brilliant because her showcases are anybody. Like, you could be a level 1 student and get into a showcase and be able to compete, like perform on a big stage in front of a big crowd and not have to compete and not have to have people judging you or scoring you. And the reason for that, I know the reason that there aren't a lot of them is because the cost. I mean, I looked into the cost, and we can talk about my later and how that came about. I mean, I don't blame them for not wanting to put shows together. Competitions bring in more money. I'm sure they're more profitable in a lot of ways.
But those are the fun ones, because that's why I love doing guest performances, because there's no pressure behind it. And it's
but so until we have more opportunities, I think competition is the next best thing.
So you mentioned that that you found other ways to be out there without competing. What are those other ways?
I think for me, it's definitely, like kind of what Jill was saying with like PoleCon. It's like getting that group of students that wouldn't necessarily come and travel to you, but they would go to a big event like that.
Right.
And it's like, I would be the same way.
Okay.
And then that's like a good precursor.
Yeah.
And then especially once I started touring, I toured a lot, a few years back. Like I would go to Seattle, I would go to Boston, Texas. I'm there a lot, Colorado. It's like I would tour a lot. And that's where I got a lot of my student base as well.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no, you're fine, babe.
Did you have a manager or anybody helping you
It was
with
me.
that?
It
It
was
was
me
you.
the whole
So
time.
how did you reach out to studios or did they
Honestly,
find you?
what I would do is like one of my best friends lives in Seattle. So when I would go to Seattle, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to just put out my feelers and see.
Okay.
And so I have a workshop menu, I have prices, and I was like, I'm always negotiable. And then when I go there, I like treat it like a legit job.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
right.
I just want, because my biggest thing is I would feel so much better if I felt invited back, like and welcomed back. And then meeting the students and getting close to the students.
Yeah.
And like I always tell students, I was like, I don't care if you've taken one class from me or like a ton of classes, like I'd like reach out to me. I was like, I'm always like down for chatting and like helping people out around the world. So, and I think, and that's where I met Jill, because I came down and we'll probably get into this later, for the first Mr. Pole Dance. And like, I've loved New Orleans since I was a kid. I've never been, and she gave me the opportunity, and then God, the rest is history. And now she's stuck with me. So
Yeah.
yep.
So do you still tour currently?
As of right now, no.
No. Okay.
I'm kind of putting touring on a hold for
Yeah.
a little bit. If something
You
comes up,
worked like for years and
I would still like, I
years.
get the guest performances, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what I consider my touring.
Okay.
Jill and I were actually just in Australia last year.
Wow.
That was kind of our last big tour. I really don't have anything going on for 2020 right now. I'm definitely want to do a lot more stuff, and
Yeah. Well, it's just January, so
it's just
we're
January, right? But yeah, that's why I would consider touring, and you know,
Yeah.
especially like I feel like for me that's where I made a good amount of money in touring, so it's like I really
Right.
like it, but obviously it's like I need to start like getting a little bit more serious about where I want to go with pole and like how I want to do it. So I'm getting a lot more jobs in the backstage area of pole
Okay.
with like training teachers and judging. So I think that's kind of like where I want to take it, because again, I can't pull forever.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. Both of you, talking about instructing, both of you are such fabulous instructors.
appreciate
No,
it. Thank you.
seriously. So you guys both did certifications. You have like a whole lifetime of experience. But is there anything that you guys continue to do to continue learning, or what is that?
Yeah, continued education is really important
Yeah.
to me. In my experience in the aerial community and the circus community, I've been to just too many studios and too many circus schools where their warm-ups are still static stretches and their instructions for conditioning and strengthening and flexibility training are things that, we did that in the 90s.
Right.
We've kind of discovered that maybe that's not the best thing.
Yeah.
I try to read articles. I have an ACE certification, so I have to watch a lot of like little, what do they call those?
The webinar.
Yeah, the
things,
little webinar
Right.
things to get my continued education credits. But I actually am glad that I did that, because some of those webinars are great, because like they've had entire ones that were all about shoulder mobility and how
And they're so
pulling shoulders
informative,
down
yeah.
and back,
Right.
like the way that we've been teaching it might be wrong. Like that's actually not how the shoulder was designed, and actually it's okay if you extend your arms a little bit more. So it's just interesting, and so I try to make sure that my instructors stay very like up to date with all that information. Obviously, when Brian first moved here, I had to like lecture him a little bit. I was like,
Oh, no,
Brian,
but
your
it was-
warm-ups are really bad.
Yeah, no, it was totally, but it totally made sense, and it was definitely well needed, because I definitely found when I started increasing those warm-ups, my body started getting banging, holla holla.
Right.
But number two, I was like, I started understanding the difference between hot and cold, when your body's hot and cold, and I was like, okay, I guess when I'm coming up, like, I'm not at my peak where I can do a handspring busted out or shoulder mount.
Yeah.
So it's like definitely that step, and like my warm-ups are very like.
Well, you're also the baby. Like you're one of the baby instructors because you're one of the youngest.
Oh, that's true.
We're
Yeah.
all in our late 30s for the most part here, and Brian's only in his 20s. So like he will warm us up, and we're just like, Brian, we've got like 10 years on you. We need at least 10 extra minutes for each of those years.
That's great. That's fantastic. Do you do continued education with your staff as well? Because they're all like, they're all incredible dancers.
They're very motivated, and we have such a strong, close-knit like group of instructors that we
will literally just, there will be some days where we don't really schedule stuff.
Yeah.
Like I always know on Tuesdays, like Amasa was always in the studio, so I would
we
go
spend a
there
lot
and
of
train with
time
Amasa.
in and out of the studios together, and a lot of us continue to get different certifications and different things, so we share a lot of information.
Okay, very
so if we get a certification, I'll be like, y'all,
Yeah, right.
you will not believe what they said. We should not be doing X, Y, and Z, or we should be doing this instead, or this method of like training shoulder mounts. Like we always share that information. We'll have like instructor get-togethers and meetings, and a lot of times we'll talk about any changes that we want to make to the way that we teach or the way we're instructing students.
And we always bring king cake to our instructor meetings, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of king cake.
King cake. Best memory of this week.
Right?
I don't know if you want to hear that
king
word
cake.
anymore.
No, I'll hear it forever, every time. Yeah, so continuing education, your instructors are fantastic. Do you work with them one-on-one to like develop their
just like
style?
how Heather had kind of, like I said, with the original Awakenings, and what really inspired me to start becoming an instructor was how carefully they prepped and primed their instructors and didn't just throw them in and kind of like, okay, figure it out.
Right.
We try to like shadow, let them shadow us and work with them and kind of, let them like teach half of my class, or I'll be like, okay, today, you're going to be responsible for doing the warm up.
Yeah.
And then I'll handle the rest of the class. And then I kind of just watch their warm up, and I'll kind of give them critiques and things like that. And, or we come up with other ideas. Obviously, I don't want them to be a cookie cutter version of me.
Right.
I have my own style of warming people up and conditioning people. I have my own style of cooling them down. I want them to find their unique way of doing things, but obviously I want them to still follow like that safe and like,
Yeah, and Jill does I would like what Jill does, because she actually does a one-on-one 6-month eval with us as well. So it's like that's kind of where like she will address like hey, like especially I remember my thing was warm ups.
Yeah.
And so she would definitely like, hey, like we need to start doing this, and it actually really helped me.
I try to have little meetings with instructors one-on-one, like in private, every 6 months, to just kind of check in with them and see like if the things in the studio are working for them. Like, is the schedule okay? Are you getting to your classes in time? Should I be bumping something down a time slot or switch something around? Is the instructor who's in class ahead of you putting pins back in and leaving the room a mess, or things like that, just to kind of make sure that they're comfortable and happy here. But it also gives me a chance to say like, hey, I've seen sometimes where I feel like you've cut your cool downs like really short, or maybe, I've seen you kind of rush through teaching this. I know it seems easy for you, but I think you need to break it down a little, and just pointing out little things like that. But I don't usually have to critique them much. They're an amazing team.
They really are.
Super motivated, and gosh, I lucked out. They're all like kind of nerdy about poles.
Oh my God,
They don't just come in and teach, like they read about it.
Yeah,
they go to every
the text, just
certification.
Mari's textbooks. We have one of our students, our instructors. She has like she always gets all like the new textbooks.
Every textbook that comes out about pole. Yeah. So, yeah. They're easy to work with.
I also love that you do like one-on-one meetings. That's also something that you did in class, is you came around individually to people and asked them, if they were having any injuries or anything. I really appreciate that. That's really smart.
Well, it's just that sometimes like what is bothering us is not something we want to like shout out in a classroom, because a lot of times when I've gone to other studios and they're like, does anybody have any injuries or anything going on, and I want to be like, you know what, like I kind of want to tell them this is my first day of my period, and I'm really tired and sluggish right now, and I might not want to like train as hard, but I don't want to shout that across the room.
Right.
So I try to make sure that like I walk the room and give them like the chance that if they want to whisper something, they can for sure. It's all about comfort.
Right. And I think that makes the space even that much more comfortable and creating that sense of community. And I'm going to come back and talk to you about your whole studio because it's just, we got to do a whole thing about it. But moving on. I want to talk about Mr. Pole Dance America.
Yes.
Like, you guys, what an incredible show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No,
Yes.
seriously. So let's just talk about how you took over.
Oh my gosh, yes. So actually, I mean, this Mr. Pole Dance America is very special to Brian and I because it's what brought us together.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're like,
It's our love child.
yeah. But I mean, it's also like what made us become close friends. So we owe a lot to the competition. But Philip Deal had it, of course, before, and he had reached out to me about doing the second one in New Orleans. We had started planning it, but really, like, most of the planning was on his end, and I was really just in charge of providing the venue.
Okay.
And then his life really kind of took a turn of, like, not for the worse, but he just had a lot of change that happened really quickly, and he just couldn't, like, any competition, unless you've done the back stage, the behind the scenes of it, you have no clue the amount of stress and just
So much
turmoil
work.
that it can cause. And so I didn't want to cancel it. I felt like, gosh, we can't cancel this. There's already people signed up to do this, and I know how long people work on their routines, so I was like, I will do my best. I've never done anything like this. I actually called Carmine Black because she had worked with it before, and she's amazing at running like her retreats and everything. So I was like, Carmine, like, help me out. Like, what do I need to do? And she was like, call Brian, get Brian there. Brian's like, he's done it before. He'll help you. And, so I got Brian and flew him out. I had never met him before, but yeah, we did our like very best to like make that year run smoothly. It went well. I mean, for having almost no time to like plan it or really do much with it, we got it together. And then we, Philip kind of told me like a couple months later, like, oh, thank you for handling that. And he's like, if you want to keep doing this, I'm happy to give it to you. Like, here's the domain name, here's this, here's that. Wow. And he's like, he's really good like with website stuff. So he really helped me get everything set up. And he was really awesome about all of that. And he kind of just let me handle it. And it's really important to me because we have a really large population of men in our studio.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel very strongly about really trying to get more representation for men and more inspiration for men in the pole scene. We're still living in the day and age where men are not allowed in certain studios.
That's crazy.
That they're only allowed to take certain co-ed classes, that they're not able to come to exotic classes. And, in my experience, and we have straight men, gay men, we have people who are transitioning.
Right.
So we have all sorts of different people who identify as men in our studio. And I can tell you that the one thing that each and every one of them has in common is that their first time here is definitely more uncomfortable than any woman
that
has walked in this door. Because there might be one other guy or two other guys in the class. We do sometimes have classes that are predominantly men, but usually not the beginners classes.
Right.
And so, it's really important to me to provide them with a safe environment. And I think Mr. Pole Dance America just needs to keep happening because it's our chance to get all of these incredible male polers together and to kind of realize like how important what they're doing is. Like, just getting up on that stage, they don't have to take a title, they don't have to win the thing, but their routine. And it's funny because one of my male students, Kyle, he kind of hasn't been taking as many classes lately because I think he was starting to get a bit disheartened that it was all going to be like girly stuff forever. And one of the performers, Andre,
Oh my God.
his routine was incredible, but also incredibly masculine.
Yes.
Like as a woman
Yes.
watching that,
Oh
I
my
would have been like,
God,
that could have
like,
been on stage in Magic Mike.
Yes.
And
hands down, that would have been
Seriously.
the killer.
and I think Kyle was just like, okay. And he talked to me later and he's like, I really want to sign back up for classes. Because it just, and that's all it took for him. He just needed to see a guy that had a style that he liked.
Right.
And I think if we don't have enough men, we don't have enough chances for people to see. I mean, can you imagine if there were only like 10 major pole stars in the women's, like, competitions?
Right.
And like all you had to like, like, oh, do I like this style? Do I like this style? But if there's only 10 to choose from, none of them might look good on your
Right,
body. Like
right.
none of them might feel achievable to you.
Yeah.
So I think it's just really important. I think we need to really kind of figure out men in the pole scene and where they fit in.
Right.
Because a lot of times I feel like they're still getting kind of shoved to the side, or they're an afterthought, or they're stuck in a category. I hate some of the pole competitions where they just stick them all to like a small category on their own.
Like the men's category,
the
and
men's
it's like
category.
5 people.
And
or
it,
like 3.
so
Right.
Yeah. No, it's like, and it's like it definitely being in that scene, like it kind of just gets old after a while, and it's like, especially probably what you saw from MPDA last night is you had people, like you had Paul Roberts doing contemporary, and then you had Miss Michael doing exotic, and then Baby K doing exotic, and then you had
the dude
Orion.
from Vegas.
Yes, Johnny doing
Oh my
contemporary. Like it
God.
was all around the board, but like there was every aspect of masculine,
Yes.
there's aspects of feminine, and it's a fantastic representation. And I think this year was definitely a monumental year because we got our staging finally, and we were able to get 10 competitors from around the world, and Dalton, the winner,
Right.
is a fantastic representation of Mr. Pole Dance 2020.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see how next year is going to go because I feel like it's just going to get higher every single year. And also the awards as well. It's like...
Yeah, so I want to get to that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I really love the way that you guys formatted the show.
Mm-hmm.
It was very seamless. I was at a workshop with you on Thursday, and there was no stage.
Mm-hmm.
There was just the room that is so awesome and open. And then we came to the show Friday night, and there was this huge stage that you had set up. So how did you find that, and how did that work?
Narnia.
Oh, yeah.
Narnia.
It's Narnia.
Yes.
We searched for venues. My studio manager, Kayla, who is also the director for the show, she's amazing. We scouted out venues. We called rigging companies and rental companies and truss renting companies, and we just started working out numbers, and we were just not happy. We were looking at like $15,000, $25,000 just for a 24-hour show, like to have the venue and the rental. And some of the venues would be like, okay, but you have to be out by this time because we need to be able to book something else right after you.
Oh my God.
We were just with the time constraints and like everything, I was like at my wit's end, and it was just getting to the point where I was like, I'm never gonna be able to find a way to make Mr. Pole Dance America, like, to actually put it in a venue and get these guys up on a stage. Like, this is just getting very stressful, and I was super disheartened. And my contractor, actually, he just comes in and does like his monthly inspection. And
Shout out to Ian.
Yeah, he does his monthly inspections on our poles at our studios, and just kind of checks our rigging points and make sure everything looks okay and the ceiling's not going to collapse. And he was just like, well, you have 3,000 square feet of space on Canal Street. He's like, you're not going to find a better venue than your own studio.
Yeah.
And he was like, I could just build a stage for you.
Really?
And so we started looking into like how these stages for like Jazz Fest, and like obviously New Orleans, we have a million music fests. So we started kind of finding people who actually were selling like old stages. So we bought an old stage and refurbished it, and it breaks down into 6 pieces that can all be stacked up on a cart. and just rolled right away, and the little legs all come off and they just get bundled up, and it breaks down to the point where I can just keep it in a very small storage unit.
Oh my gosh.
And and the backdrop actually was a gift from my studio manager. She had it made, I think when we were in Australia, she had it made as like a surprise. So yeah,
that was incredible. I love how much you guys supported the entertainers. Like, it was all about them, and the level of performers. Like, oh my God, how did you get people to enter the show?
One thing that Jill and I are very passionate about is definitely cash prizes, because I feel like you can do the biggest competition in pole fitness, however, you just get the title, and it's like, okay, now what do I do with it? But
and not just that, but competing is expensive.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Travel,
Right.
lodging, it's super expensive. So Jill and I, we were very passionate about actually having cash prizes. So the top 3 placements do get cash prizes.
Nice.
But also, it's like we do a little bit of our own searching as well as opening it up. So like I kind of...
Well, we discovered Baby K, for example, because we were judging Melee on the Bayou, and he was amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He was so good, and so we said you should definitely perform it for Mr. Pole Dance America. And sometimes we will find things like that. Brian and I get asked to judge or showcase a lot, so we get the opportunity to actually see people before, we don't, it's not even a video, we get to see them live and what's their energy like on stage, and how are they, feeding into the audience and everything. And so sometimes when we see things like that, we're just like, okay, we have to remember that person and contact them when it gets closer to.
No, it's really cool because you see in the camaraderie between the men too.
That was like one of the coolest things.
Yeah. And that's like how, especially like when if this is their first competition, or if they're new to competition, they compete in MPDA, like you get that gateway where it's like, now I have a friend in Canada, I have a friend in Florida, I have a friend in Chicago. So it's like that good introductory. And also it's like, I feel like it's better when you have that camaraderie backstage, because it takes the pressure off.
And for some of these men, they may be the only male pole dancer in their whole studio. So the only other male pole dancers they get to ever talk to or relate to or meet are if they come and do the competition and then spend the weekend in New Orleans. And the guys hang out with each other quite a lot.
We went like right after competition. I think all the competitors, we went out to the Fruit Loop in the French Quarter, which is all the bars. So we had fun.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Something that I think you guys did a great job of, that we talked a little bit about beforehand, is that camaraderie and establishing that before the show even happened. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you did that? It just
really comes down to, we always thank them for coming, but it's just really to impress upon them the importance of the men in the pole scene sticking together, even though it's a competitive environment. Obviously, they're all in it to win it.
But
they
it's
want
like
the title.
every single one of them, they are the future. And they are the representation.
Like I said, it only takes, it just takes, one person to go up on stage and do pole in a unique way that maybe sparks interest in somebody who would have never thought they would ever do it. And it's really important that they have their own personalities and their own, their own styles, and just that they kind of support each other, because there's just, the pole world is supportive and inclusive as it says it is, can still often feel very cliquey and very difficult to get into and
navigate.
Navigate, and especially for a man and especially for a straight man who
was not used to that kind of
and they
stuff.
feel like they're kind of the enemy, or they feel like they shouldn't be there. I think it can be very unfriendly sometimes. So we just kind of always remind them that it's super important for them to keep doing this, because there's still so much pioneer work to be done on the male side of pole dance.
And you could tell though, because backstage, there was a moment right before the show started, and it sounded like you guys were doing all hands in, 1, 2, 3, go, and then each time a performer's name would be announced by the MC, everybody, both backstage and in front was like cheering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like so special. I don't think I've seen that at other competitions. That's something definitely special. Another cool thing that I thought you guys did was the VIP section. So
Yes.
the VIP section not only, had closer seats and was at a table and everything, but they also got to choose the superlatives.
The People's Choice
People's Choice
Awards.
Awards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's superlatives. You're correct.
Right. High school.
I know. I was most individualistic.
Right.
Really? I
Yes.
can believe
I
that.
could see that.
Yeah, I can see that. I did not win any.
I was like, neither. I was like the awkward kid. I was like, I just want to go home and play video games.
Like, can I leave now?
Yeah.
But you guys, I love that you celebrated individuality. So anybody that was sitting in the VIP section was asked to vote for, what were some of the categories?
Like some of the categories were like best trick combo, best contemporary, best exotic. We had ones like sexiest legs, best costume. And the reason, actually my good friend Leah Franklin gave me the idea because she was telling me she goes to a competition and every one of them got their individualized awards. So it's like, yeah, you're still taking home a title. Everyone still took home a title. You
Right.
can
And it's
still,
not even faked. It's
No,
like,
it's-
you know what I mean?
No.
Because
it's like a legit title.
yeah, like they legit, like it's not like we're just like, okay, well, we need to make sure everybody gets one. Like honestly, like across the board, it is quite varied. So
Yeah.
pretty much everybody.
And you can still put on your like resume, like, oh, Mr. Pole Dance America, I won
Best trick combo.
Right.
Honestly, there's times that I would like to get that.
Me
award.
too.
I really like, forget the title. I just want to be told I had the best combo.
Best costume.
Yeah, there's the best
Seriously.
costume or something. Oh, good, somebody noticed this thing. It cost me $600.
Exactly. Thank God.
And we got like really nice certificates, and we printed it out so that would be really nice to frame. But
It
yeah, that
also
was,
it put them in the perspective of what it would be like to be judged too. The VIP tables actually commented later on. They were like, I didn't realize how difficult being a judge would be. It was so hard to pick some of those.
Right.
And I think that some people forget that. I mean, I'm on the judging table quite a lot in pole competitions, and you just feel terrible because somebody's going to walk away with nothing, and most of the time it's a lot of people.
Right.
And it's heartbreaking sometimes, and you don't want to feel like that, obviously, like, you're part of that fate.
Right.
But at the same time, it's very easy for competitors to be like, well, I didn't think the judges did a good job, or I didn't think well, to be fair, like, try to do our job.
Right.
Like, if you see 20 people who are absolutely amazing go on stage and you're coming, I mean, we're talking like you're down to like 0.5 between two competitors.
Totally.
I mean, it gets that close sometimes, or sometimes it's so close that we have to kind of reconvene and talk about, like, how do we want to place this? Because these two people, I can't even decide between. And it's hard. And I think some people, forget how difficult the other side of that is. Just like even putting together a competition, it's really easy to blame the polls, blame the stage, blame the way it was run. I mean, it's always easier to blame other people.
Yeah, it's definitely hard too, especially doing it from a judge's perspective, because then you feel bad, because then, like I always say with people, like, everyone's at their best. Not just you're at your best, but everyone's coming there for your best. And sometimes, and judging a lot of times is sometimes subjective. It depends on the individual person sometimes. And, and the point system for MPDA this year was super close. I don't think I announced this, but between first and second was 0.38 of a point.
Wow.
So it was very, very close. But I feel that, we have just as a hard job as you guys do competing, like how much pressure it is to like pick some, like, the best.
Or even like on our end, like putting it together, we're just like terrified. Like, what if something, like, what if a pole isn't spinning properly during a competitor's set? There's so many things that could go wrong from our end. We're trying to make it as like seamless as possible and not do anything that would hinder their performance. And that
is there anything that you do in preparation to kind of minimize those things that could happen?
We tested those poles. We tested that stage. We're like,
that's one of the good things about owning our own stage and our studio being the venue, because we can have so much more time to prepare. Like, you've
heard horror stories of competition
Yeah.
setting up, and all of a sudden they have to resort to stage polls, and like that's
That
just
doesn't-
We
nuts.
just don't want that.
We don't
to
want
ever
that.
happen.
We-
People invest too much time and money into
Right,
competing.
right.
And it's stressful because
and-
it's both Jill and my name on it. So
Right,
it's like we want to
right.
make sure that people are like, no, they handle this competition
Right.
well. But you're always,
Yeah.
I mean, you're always going to have that backlash regardless.
Of course,
you know?
nobody is. You can't please everybody. But no, I really love the way that you celebrated each person's individuality and also created some engagement between the audience and the competitors. Like it was a really nice, like, yeah, this is a VIP experience. Like I'm getting to choose things.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that was really cool was while the scores were being tallied, the sponsor for the show, who was the
Pole Tarot.
They created a narrative for the showcase.
So
We
Pole
created
Tarot,
a narrative.
yeah. So Pole
for
Tarot
them.
is
Really?
yeah, it's a company that I actually found through one of my good friends from Austin, Texas. Her name is Des.
Okay.
It's her company. She partners with a girl, and they made these tarot decks. And I
Yeah.
remember her contacting me one day. And me and Jill are very much spiritual. I mean, I've practiced and I've done research in voodoo. She's
Yeah.
done a lot of practice in like witchcraft. So it's like we
Yeah.
like that kind of stuff. We love spiritual stuff. So when Des contacted me, she's like, "Hey, can I use an image of yours for something? We're gonna do a painting." And I didn't know what the project was. I was like, "Oh, absolutely!" Like Des is a homie, so I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And then when I saw it, I was like, "Oh my god! Like
Yeah.
these are brilliant, and they're beautiful cards with pole dancers." And then it comes with the booklet talking about like the cards. So it's a legit tarot deck,
Yeah.
but it has pole dance
And, like,
influence.
influence.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like marries that bridge. And there's a lot of pole dancers who are spiritual and do dabble in tarot.
Absolutely.
So it's perfect for them. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then so we contacted Des because obviously New Orleans is very much a magical city. So
That's so smart.
yeah, so then we're like, hey, like we're doing a pole show, and also we're doing a show called Tarot, and we're like, we'd love for you to be part of it. And they were on
Really?
board. Pole Tarot was so supportive, sent us little booklets and sent
Yeah.
us pole tarot
So
cards.
we choose our sponsors wisely because we don't want to just throw in something that's
Right.
not really connected.
Yeah.
So we reached out and
Wow.
wanted to like have them. We gave them the opportunity. Like, do you want to be part of this
Wow.
first? Because obviously it made the most sense. It,
Right.
It worked
So
with our theme and everything.
Where did the idea for tarot come from? And like, why did you decide to do a showcase, an instructor showcase?
Well, because we just in other times when we've done MPDA or similar competitions, we wanted to be able to spend more time on the score sheets and let judges have a meeting. Because when you have to go first, second, or third, it's always hard.
Right.
Because you kind of worry, will the judges forget
Right.
what I did by the end of it? Am I going to seem like a distant memory?
And that's why we like made sure our judges kept all their score sheets
Right,
for every single
we
right,
let them
person.
keep their score sheets, and we let them go back and determine, like, are you happy? Like, here's the results. Are you
Yeah.
happy with this? Do you feel like this should be different? Would you like to go back and make any changes or change any of your notes? So just things like that we like to make sure that we have time for. And so we were just looking for like a quick, like 6-7 performances to do.
And I love a themed show.
Yeah.
I'm such a big like
Yeah.
theme person, and I think we actually had the idea of doing a tarot show for quite a while, and then finally when the opportunity like arose, we were like, oh, let's do it for this.
Yeah.
And so we had all our instructors pick one of the cards. And so, like, Jill and I were Emperor and Empress, so we
That
had
was
a
so
doubles
cool.
And
routine.
then on a more personal note, it just so happens that a lot of the cards that they picked were representing personal things that were going on in their lives. And I think it's so, you guys don't see the behind the scenes, but pretty much like after that night, so many of the instructors went on our group on Facebook and were just thanking, MPDA for like having the opportunity to be able to perform, because some of their tarot cards that they picked are very deeply connected to
Yeah.
things that are going on in their lives. Even my tarot card, like the Emperor and Empress, when we picked those cards, like originally Brian was just like, we should be Emperor and Empress, which he was just saying to be like, oh, he just, it was
Right.
just like the first thing, like he's
Yeah.
very spontaneous and he's very just like first thing that comes to head.
Never.
That's what he wanted to do. But it worked out because, you know, in my mind, I was trying to figure out, well, how can I make this like more of like a personal thing? And, you know, it really kind of worked out that he picked those because, you know, they have that saying like, you know, heavy is the head that wears the crown. You know, the more responsibility you have, the more weight is on your shoulders and it weighs you down. And, you know, Brian, like as my best friend and also my colleague, like part of like what his friendship has like brought to my life is just that he has just alleviated so much stress for me and he's taken some of that burden.
It's me and some of the daiquiris on purpose.
Yeah, even though it's like things like that, but it is like it's so important still. So our like whole symbolic like representation of having the crown, and whoever has the crown on is like not able to move, they're like kind of stagnant and standing still. With the person who doesn't have the crown is the one that is moving and dancing and kind of feels light and you know, beautiful, and being able to kind of just pass that responsibility back and forth and then just decide to both share it together or let it go when it needs to be
Get it also.
was really important. So
No, and I think it also was cool representation. It's like, because the way we were dancing was definitely Jill and Brian at their... Jill's very pretty up on the hoop, and then I'm just like a disgusting
well, I have a totally different
monster.
dancing style on the hoop than the pole, and that's actually why I decided to do hoop instead of pole, because I wanted to be more contrast to him. And like my pole style is way more like bouncy and ratchet.
Ratchet, getting all some
But my hoop
monies.
style is very flowy. So
No, that was fantastic. I could see how that would be like a cathartic experience, you know, connecting to that card and then working through it. So you guys developed that whole narrative. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, oh, they reached out to them, and
we reached
you know.
out to an actual like well-known tarot reader here in New Orleans, Christy Kraft, and she's the one that designed the narrative for us. And she actually helped us like put together like what cards would make more sense. So we only had some cards to choose from. We didn't choose from everything in the major arcana. She helped us kind of like, well, this would make sense in a reading. And
And then like one of the raffle items was a 30-minute reading with her. So that was like, that was what everyone wanted.
Right.
It's like you put a raffle and it's like that one item, like pull. And all of a sudden they're like, no, I want the tarot reading. And I was like,
so she did all the like the intro stuff for us. So we just tried to keep it as authentic as possible. We didn't want to, you know, especially here in New Orleans where witchcraft and voodoo, actually statistically speaking, New Orleans' biggest religion is Catholicism. It's Catholic, but our second largest is voodoo. And I don't think there's any other city that can say that that a religion like voodoo or witchcraft or anything would be so high in their population. So you definitely don't want to mess up tarot here.
Right. I think you guys did an amazing job honoring it. It was really, really beautiful, and I love the way that it filled up the time without thinking about it.
Totally,
I wasn't considering like, oh, they're in the back tallying up scores and the People's Choice and everything. It was like, no, this is the show.
Well, also, it's like
attention.
sometimes when you do go to those competitions and they have that intermission at the end of the show and everyone's like kind of like just waiting. Like, I'd rather watch a show and then everything be done.
Also, as a competitor, I'd rather
absolutely
go out and
like,
be distracted.
Take my mind
let me
off
just
of it.
watch some other people perform. That's not even like, because that's the one thing is like sometimes if you're competing, there are competitors that don't like to watch the other competitors.
Right.
So they're just sitting in the back listening to the audience screaming for other people and wondering what's going on out there. And so it was our chance to kind of give them like something to watch. So they had a little show that was unrelated to what they were doing. So it didn't matter what we were doing up on the polls. Like it wasn't going to affect, you know, their scores, but it hopefully got their mind off of things and made that
it's definitely a tradition we want to
better.
continue with Mr. Pole Dance America. It works best on the back end too because, you know,
I ended up having to run back to my house.
Oh, yeah, she had to
because
run
I
back to her.
Forgot
What?
I
Really?
forgot the cash prize.
Oh my God. That's
It was
so
such a
funny.
stressful
So
day.
as soon as I got off the hoop, I had to run back
Oh
to
my
my
God.
house.
Yeah, and then I'm back there like doing
And
the score
he's like
tallies.
under the desk, like trying to last minute like do some
Oh
of like
my
the People's
God.
Choice Awards and everything. So yeah, it was like it kind of distracted everybody from the chaos that was
Yeah.
happening.
But it worked out great.
Yeah,
Would
it was
never
fine.
have known.
Yeah.
The show just was like one very well-oiled machine.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm guessing you guys just totally collaborate together, or is it
Oh, yeah.
split? Or
No, we totally do. I mostly I kind of started off because I'm kind of the one that reaches out to people.
Okay,
And
yep.
then Jill does a lot of the social media for it and
Okay.
also the website for it. So she kind of handles that back end.
Okay.
But no, it totally is a collaboration.
Yeah. And have you found that like working as a partnership, it's just been the most beneficial?
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
I think
well-
maybe for us, I don't know if like
For
It
us,
doesn't work
doesn't
for
work
everybody.
for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are some major benefits in working with somebody else.
For sure.
Yeah.
It just Brian and I are well like suited together
Mm-hmm.
to work because we are completely opposites. Like he is like right brain, emotional, like
Right.
kind of like spontaneous, and I'm much more left brain, logical. So
Yeah.
I think
and it's
that
like,
works well.
And it's definitely like Jill and I are starting to create like our own like company between each other.
Yeah.
So we can actually put like a name
wanna
behind.
Yeah, and
And,
also
like-
we want to start producing more shows that
Yeah.
are non-competitive, where
Yeah.
people and aren't just like for pole stars, because I feel like
Right.
some pole shows get so heavy with pole stars because
Yeah.
they're the ones that put in.
Right.
And of course, if it's like 100 people apply and you can only take 25 people,
You're
gonna
gonna
try to
go.
take the ones that
Right.
sell tickets. But honestly, the cool thing about New Orleans is that
they
they
don't
don't
know.
give a
Yeah.
fuck.
No.
It's people email us every week and are like, "Oh, I'm coming to New Orleans. Can I teach workshops?" And I'm just like, I know who you are, but I
Right.
can tell you that New Orleans is such a closed off city. Like you've probably noticed, we have
Yeah.
our own traditions, we have our own holidays,
Yeah.
we have our own way of doing things.
Yeah.
It's like almost like being completely separated from the rest of the U.S.
It is. It does. It feels like that.
A little
So-
little Caribbean European city in the South. Yeah.
It's like untouched.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so as a result, the students just aren't into like pole stars.
Uh-huh.
So like
Right.
it wouldn't make a difference to them if I put Felix Kane on the stage or you.
Right, right.
They would like be like, oh, and as long as somebody's performing
Right.
for me, I am
Yeah.
happy to buy a ticket. They just
Yeah.
want to see a show. It doesn't have to be the biggest names. It can be just
Anyone.
somebody. In fact, they would come to see you because they already know who you are.
Right,
They're
right,
like, oh,
right.
I had a class with her.
Yeah.
And that's a better connection for them.
for
Like that
sure.
will get them there to support quicker
Yeah.
than just having Instagram followers.
Yeah,
so,
even I can tell as an outsider coming from Los Angeles, when I first did a couple classes in New Orleans, like my classes were kind of like slimmer than they were today.
Okay.
But then with my exotic class today, it was a full house,
Yeah.
and it's like because they know who I am, they see me around the
Right.
studio, and they're like, I trust Brian. I've seen
Right,
Brian before,
right.
and like he's and like
I like his style.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
and yeah, it's really humbling, and that's when you get the connections with your students.
and
Yeah.
it's great because we can put together shows and not have to worry like, oh, well, we have to bring in all these big names to sell tickets. No, we
Right,
can
no.
open up our doors to pollers of all levels and of all, experience, or, even if they have 10 Instagram followers, they
Yeah.
can still, be very successful on that stage because, like I said, New Orleans is just happy to see a show.
Right,
So
right.
I'm
And-
really excited to kind of, like I said, I think Colleen Jolly is one of the few. There are a few others. Bad to the Chrome, Buttercup
Chrome,
Studio.
yeah, definitely.
They do a great job of bringing in every. They have
It's a
some major
variety,
pole stars,
yeah.
but there's also a ton of people who are like,
Yeah.
I've been doing pole for 3 months. So,
Right, right.
I'd love for more people to do that and give
Yeah.
people that opportunity because not everyone wants to compete, but
No.
they do want to perform.
Yeah, and
So-
everybody should be given that opportunity. I think there's nothing like that feeling of performing, and everybody should be able to experience that, and especially in a way that's not putting pressure on them because like I am never going to compete. Like that's just not my jam.
And but that's what a lot of people think is they're like,
Right.
because I'm not gonna compete, I'll never see that stage,
Right.
and that is not the case.
No, and it doesn't have to be that way. And this is such a fabulous place to hold shows. Do you think you'll continue doing them in the studio?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think
That makes
now
so
that
much
we have
sense,
the
right,
stage
the
set up and
stage,
we've
yeah.
invested in the stage, we own it now, so it's not much for us. We've
Right.
learned how to set it up, and it's
now you
done.
have like kind of a
Now we have our
guideline
own
as
venue.
to
Yeah, we know,
to
like,
structure the
MPDA
shows.
was kind of like, let's test this out and see how
Right.
it goes. And now that we've done it, we're like, okay,
Yeah,
this will
because
be
we got
great.
the idea from Buttercup Studios because Sarah Jade built a stage
stage in her
inside her
studio.
studio.
Yeah,
And like,
yeah.
that's so smart. And it's
Right.
like still your studio, but
Yeah.
like with lights and a curtain, all of a sudden it transforms.
transforms.
It's
But
a
also,
venue.
you don't have to worry so much about the
Divisiveness.
and the
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, the money too,
So
yeah.
like the financial, like to rent a stage, to rent trussing,
Yeah.
to rent a venue. There's a reason that like, you know, tickets can be really expensive to some of those shows,
Right.
or that they do need to bring in big names
Yeah.
to get people in the door. And now with us having our own stage and using our own studio as a venue, we won't have to worry so much
Yeah.
about the financial aspect
Right,
of it.
right.
Like it would not be so expensive for us
Right,
to
right.
put shows together on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're hoping that will
Yeah.
allow us to continue to, you know, support the pole scene and give some of the underdogs a chance to get up on
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah, we have a couple ideas in the works, little secret top
Yes.
secret projects between
I
Squeak and
love
I, which
it.
we're excited to announce eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, please keep us up to date.
Of
We'll
course.
be dying to hear. I can't wait to come see another show here, because seriously, like, I've watched a lot of shows and I've been to a decent amount. Like Florida, I feel like is inundated with shows.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But this was one of the best shows I've ever been to. Like
Oh, thank you.
the level of entertainment and the focus on the performers, like it was just like bam, bam, bam. Like it was just so good. So thank you guys for creating a space where it's not only professional, but you're celebrating people. So I really love that. So normally at this time, I ask, what is your favorite performance of yourselves and then somebody else? And it doesn't have to be all-time favorite of somebody else, just anybody that's performed that touches you.
oh jeez.
So favorite
Not
of
it.
yourself.
Brian goes first.
Okay. I
Of
think
yourself.
my favorite performance for me, I have two. I kind of have my first performance win the PPC when I did my Troy Boy piece. I think that was my favorite because it was such a monumental win for me, and that's I think what got my start into the community. But yeah, so that was mine. And also,
And what year was that?
That was, oh gosh, I think 2016.
Okay, yep, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yep.
That was an incredible performance.
Yeah, and I remember my pole mom, Veronica, she like prepped me for it, and we were like trying really, and that was the one time I was like, I'm just gonna do it. If I win, great. If I don't, we'll see how it goes. And and that's when I actually kept with heels because I got such a big feedback with heels. And I was just gonna be like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do a performance in heels. It'll go either way. And it went really well. And I was like, okay, no, it's fun. And then I also think probably my last competition, Dance Filthy 2018, just because I could add that New Orleans flavor and like voodoo.
Yeah.
And it was definitely, of course, it was like a dramatized voodoo, but it was still like two things that are like kind of close to my heart. So.
Yeah, it's something like I watched it back because the details. Oh my God, your details in your performances are insane.
I was like, I'm first to say I'm not the best pole dancer in the world.
No.
Nor am I going to be the best float.
But your
it's
fucking details.
It's the small things.
Yes, at the beginning of the routine, there's this thing that you do with your
the ankle
ankles.
rolls. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. So I was watching it back and I was like, oh, that's a voodoo doll. This is like New Orleans.
Yeah.
Like it all made sense.
Yeah.
But that performance,
No, totally.
I was in the room for it, and the energy was just like so incredible. Yeah.
And then my favorite from someone's, I got to go with probably my sister Nadia Sharif. I was like, anytime. Ooh.
Any?
Probably my favorite. Oh, this is going to be a good story. My favorite was probably her Miss Pole Dance America piece as Harley Quinn. She had the box at Luscious Maven, and I would stick notes inside, like No, they're dirty nuts.
Oh, okay.
I could be a dirty bitch with Nadia. I call her like a skinny Virginia Slim smoking bitch, and I like keep it in the box for her. So she has all these notes in these boxes, and so it was pretty fun. I think that one's favorite just because of the work she put into it, and
So much
I mean
fun.
she's my Miss Pole Dance Universe skank of the world. That was probably mine.
I love that Muse, that song. Oh my God. Everything about that performance is so cool.
God, Nadia's such trash.
Yeah.
I love her.
How about you?
I mean, my favorite performance that I've ever done is probably going to be on the Hustler stage when I made like at least 501s.
Yes.
But
Was it to like? She always says it's so cute when Jill dances on stage because she always does. She always do like the songs you never expect her to do. Like
Yeah.
she does Hey Ya, Backstreet Boys, but it's like the ones where it's so fun to watch her on stage. And like I can go to competition forever, but the way I get my inspiration is in the strip club.
Yeah.
I'll go to Hustlers and sit there, and even when she's working, I'll just sit and watch, and it's just so inspirational. I would agree with you on that. Your stage sets are pretty dope.
I think I actually perform the best on stage at the strip club. But if I had to pick like my favorite like video, I liked my last Dance Filthy routine a lot.
Die Another Day.
Doing the
Magic.
jewel thief kind of routine. That one was like the first time I put more of my entertainer background into developing, because that's what we would do in an entertainer competition. There'd be a lot of props and a story.
Yeah.
You know, there'd be a whole lot happening.
She was just a little slutty jewel thief.
Yeah.
You made it disappear and then reappear.
I know, and people were really like confused about how the jewel got.
Right.
I'm
Like,
still
people were
confused about
legit.
it,
People
Yes.
were legit asking me at the end. So wait, how did you do that? And then my favorite that I've ever seen is honestly Chili Rocks when we were.
Oh my, yes.
So
hell yes.
Chili Rocks from
Yes.
Sydney, Australia, did a Dance Filthy piece.
It was her guest performance. It was this year, 2019.
Okay.
And so they have something in Australia that is similar to our Sesame Street, and I think it's called Play School.
Play school, yeah.
Yeah, and so she took the Play School theme song and the opening like credits, like and just a lot of aspects of it, and she made it porn school, and which she sings, and like they have it's like overdubbed with her voice, and I mean, tons of props, tons of costumes, tons of people out on the stage, and she's doing things like and
I'm squirty.
She's like, and today's word is bukkake.
Yeah.
Do
Oh
you
my
know
God.
what bukkake is?
That's
And like,
fantastic.
there's these little cute songs where they're like, splish, splosh, having a wank, and like,
God.
and they have like fake penises and they're jerking off on the girls.
Oh my
I mean,
God. That's
it's one of those
fantastic.
things. It's like Michelle and Maddie were saying, like, if you do sex, no matter how perverted it is, no matter how like crude it is, if you do it in a funny way, you can get away with so much.
Yeah.
And Chili definitely always pushes
Oh my gosh.
the boundaries. But the thing that I love about her is honestly her shows are like entertainer shows to me.
Right.
Like
right.
the amount of costume and the amount of
Yep.
props
And the water effects.
everything,
Yeah,
all the work that she
right,
must have put
right.
into it,
It's
it
insane.
feels like how an entertainer competition would look. So I love the fact that they bring that into, you know, like their pole world in Australia is much more like the stripper world and the fitness world combined. There's not really as much of a
Divide.
line there, and whereas we have like a lot more restrictions with what we can have in competitions, and you know, I got like docked points in Dance Filthy for putting the flashlight in my mouth.
Eye roll. Hashtag eye
Yeah,
roll.
seriously.
But you know, it's okay. I understand, like, you know, sometimes it's not even the person who's putting it together. Sometimes it's the venue. Sometimes it's, you know, whoever owns the show. There could be numbers. Or maybe they sold tickets to children. Like, I get it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and it's just American. We're very conservative.
Right,
So,
right.
compared to many other countries.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've never watched it,
Yeah.
you've got to watch it. It's
Yep.
the most hilarious thing you're ever going to see.
It will now be linked to the show notes.
And the semen is coconut water so that the
that's
vegan
right.
girls wouldn't have complained.
oh my God. Thought out everything.
Yeah, she thought out everything. She was a
All the
vegan friendly bukkake situation.
I love it. Well, it's funny. Both of you mentioned my favorite performances of both of you. The Jewel Thief, that was like so cool. I remember just like, again, being there and being like, whoa, magic and pole. Why hasn't this come together before?
Yeah.
That was just so cool. And then Mr. Pole Dance.
Well, I love Dance Filthy. I wish we had more competitions that, like, one of the things I really like about Dance Filthy and that Allison does well is she really does encourage, like, story.
Yeah,
And,
right.
like, theme.
Right.
Concept is really important.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing. I wish more of our competitions would, like, delve into that. We used to have pole theater. I don't know what happened to it. It's kind of, I guess, just kind of faded out. Maybe somebody will pick it back up. But yeah, I would love to see, more competitions with concept because it's so much fun if you can tell a story. Sometimes we're so worried about, like, we don't want to take too much time away from the pole.
Right.
We don't want to take too much time away from performing tricks. But, I mean, as an audience member, there's only so many routines you can watch where it's just straight up pole, and after a while you feel like your eyes are going cross.
Right.
And when there's like a story and props and like a theme, you're like, wow, wait a second, is this that? And I remember that, like a pop culture reference from the 90s or something.
Right.
That can
it
just,
makes
like,
you connect.
and you're back in it again.
It's so good. Yeah. I think about even just the show the other night. What was the guy's name from Vegas? I'm so sorry.
Johnny.
Okay. Him getting up on stage and lighting up a cigarette.
Yes.
That was like so bold and so simple, but like it made it. Like it made me like be like from that moment.
For sure, because you're right. It's so funny that that's become controversial, but it is
Right.
controversial.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so
But
cool.
we don't, and that's one of the things, we don't limit the men.
Right.
They don't really have, when they say, like, well, what can we do in our pieces? We're just like, well, just don't take your junk out.
Right.
But other than that, whatever you want.
I love
And
it.
some of them just do more of like a classical, like straight up performance.
And that's okay.
And
I
some
love
do stories.
Yeah, the mix of everything.
But
is
honestly,
great.
the ones that placed, if you think about it,
They have
they're so
stories.
but they're so different
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like so different. So it's not even like the judges are leaning toward, one thing or another thing. Like Dalton is incredibly like sexy, flowy, heel, exotic, kind
And
of like
Andre is like super.
Andre was like
strong,
again like
power polar.
you would see that in a Magic Mike show,
Right.
and
then
Joey,
Johnny.
Johnny is just like.
Was contemporary.
Not even contemporary. I mean, more acrobatic.
and flexy. And
Like Chinese pole.
That
like,
was
really-
crazy.
Yeah. So, he's
Great.
He's gotten really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've reached the end of my questions for this one. Thank you.
Tears.
I know. This was seriously, so my husband and I have been traveling for about 2.5 months, and all of our plans were like immediately trashed when we were going to head up to like Iowa and do a bunch of stuff, but the cold came way too soon. So we haven't been able to travel as much, but like getting to spend some time with you guys and you guys just welcoming us both in was just so nice. So it makes my life not feel so lonely. So thank you so much for your hospitality. I will never forget the king cake party. It was like the coolest thing ever.
Oh, we should probably say like real quick what a king cake party is.
Yeah, so you say it because
So king
It's
cake
amazing.
it's a New Orleans tradition. We eat king cake during carnival season. It's basically kind of like a cinnamon roll
like an
bread.
icing cinnamon roll,
And
yeah.
it's like usually in a circular shape, and it's got icing and
And a baby
sprinkles
inside.
And there's a baby.
And there's
You
a
got all
baby
the
inside. There's a
babies.
plastic baby inside, and it's a Catholic tradition. It came from Catholicism in those traditions, but obviously New Orleans has kind of embraced it in its own way as a whole different thing. And so anyway, a lot of people do king cake parties down here because people argue about what bakeries are the best or where to get your king cakes or which kind to get. And so these king cake parties, you just bring a king cake and you invite a bunch of people and you try all kinds of king cake, and we had 37 of them.
37.
And so
30, yeah.
you could pile it up high on your plate.
Well, even so, it's funny because like some of the king cakes weren't actually king cakes. Like one of the ones that won was a crunch. So it was like
right,
it was
the
more
crack.
of a toffee.
Yeah, the bark.
And then they also bring king cake daiquiris
vodka,
and king cake vodka.
daiquiris. Yeah, we make everything king cake
Yeah.
flavor this time of year. But yeah, it's bigger than Christmas for us in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. So we were happy that you were able to come.
Oh man, that was so cool.
And
I
you came
felt
at the
like a
right time because
local.
sometimes when it actually is Mardi Gras,
Yeah.
it's too overwhelming.
Yeah. It's,
So you came at it's always good to come a little bit before
Right,
the actual
right.
events because you'll no
Is-
crowds.
Yeah, right.
Right.
It's so I can't believe how busy it is even now. It was like cold out yesterday. Well, cold for me.
It's 24/7 here.
Yeah, it is. It's like a different world. But thank you guys again so much.
And thank you for having
thank
your
you
first
so much.
threesome with us.
Yes. I'll never forget. And I'm definitely going to come back and talk to you all about awakenings because that's like a whole other topic. So thank you guys again.
Thank
Thank
you.
See
you.
you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
And that's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to know more, you already know what to do. Head over to theaerialhour.com and check out our show notes. And if you want to help out the show, please write us a review on Apple or any of the other podcast platforms that you can write a review on. This really helps people find us by ranking us higher in podcast directories. I think that's all for this episode. If you want to know where we're headed next, follow us on the gram, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
I really don't have anything going on for 2020 right now. I'm definitely want to do a lot more stuff and
Yeah. Well, it's just January, so
it's just
we're
January, right? But yeah, so it's